Hey, hello, miners. Welcome back to the training here. In this section, we're going to be talking about one of the biggest challenges that you might be facing, especially when it comes to like monitoring these sorts of events. We'll talk about what you should do whether an event goes indoors, what you should do if there's like a big disruptive behavior, I guess, get a situation going on. And yeah, this is one of the biggest challenges. Wouldn't you agree, Chrissy?
Yeah, I mean, that's really when most of the time you are just monitoring, but then when this disruption piece starts to happen, that's when you actually have to kind of step in and do some things. So, like, for example, like when you're in that moment, right, you have to make calculated decisions. Again, if someone's, there's a back and forth going on, you have to be paying attention to see if it's something that it's time to step in or it's just like protest and counter protest happening that's appropriate, etc. Then always asking yourself, is this compatible? So you have to that's like this backup thought that you're having the whole time. Is it compatible with what's happening? But also, like, is there heckling happening? Are there threats happening? Somebody being provoked, right? Because I don't ever want anything to escalate to violence. So if you feel like you're on the edge of that in that moment, that's also a very decisive time. And, harassment, I think that we use that term a lot when kind of in a very general way, but like by the definition itself that the institution has. So it's severe, it's pervasive, it's repetitive, and it's focused on a person, right?
Yes.
Because harassment can't be this broad writ thing under our definition. It's focused on one person. Like I'm following Armando over and over again, and Armando's telling me to stop, and I'm doing it over and over. So again, I'm harassing you. So that's something that we can intervene with as well. But then those true threats of violence, right? So there's provocation, but then there's just straight up threats. Those are definitely things that we want to get engaged on. And then obviously incitement of imminent like lawless actions, right? We're gonna, there's not going to give examples here, but there are, the open forums, but like obviously moving something indoors, taking over a building, different things that do happen during demonstrations. Those are like lawless actions, right?
Yes.
Like trespassing and damaging property, etc. So then if you ask yourself just lots of questions when you're in that space, like how is this landing in the moment, like, right? Because even if I'm just the one heckler and maybe everybody's okay and it's just a momentary blip on the screen, but if I'm a heckler who's then also getting the whole crowd worked up, that's probably something that you need to get on top of too. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting stuff. Yeah, there's many different examples. I know these are just a few, but these are, I think, the biggest ones that we usually see whenever a situation like this arises and whenever we get all those calls.
Yeah.
So based on these examples, what are some tips you can provide for some event monitors on how they can really address the situation in the moment?
Yeah, so we have lots of folks who end up hosting events and they're able to just manage them themselves. But the tips that we always give them is, let's say you're doing the Q&A, do not hand the microphone over. Like, you do the thing with the microphone where you're holding it and you let somebody ask the question. But the second you give over that microphone, if I'm there to disrupt an event, now I've got the microphone. And so I've got a lot more control over what's happening.
Right.
And then obviously if you have an operations team there for an event or whatever it might be, because a lot of this, we can see it coming, right? Because you're bringing that controversial speaker or whatever it might be. Make sure you have like an operational team. As the First Amendment monitor, you may be part of that team. And so making sure those folks know what to expect if you have to step in. But also we always have to stay cool, right? Because the reality is that it's hard because you'll get amped up. Like we all feel the energy surge, the adrenaline. Yes. Then we have to like take a breath before we move into the situation because we don't want to make it worse. So then if you're a monitor and we're working like, let's say commencement, that would be a good time. Like if you see something happening to let the other monitors know so that there can be kind of a convergence of folks who can help monitor, witness, kind of manage the situation. So those are just some tips, but that microphone piece is huge. Like a lot of times I tell people, if you're worried about an event, making it a ticketed event so that then you have a little bit more understanding of who's at the event might be helpful. But also if you're doing a Q&A, you can also ask for the questions online or you could ask for the questions ahead of time too, so that someone doesn't take advantage to disrupt your event.
Okay, sweet. So yeah, it looks like when you're monitoring the First Amendment especially, there are many different challenges that may arise, as you mentioned. And I think one of the biggest ones can be really when an event starts to escalate. You talked about, giving the microphone away to someone, they'll have like all the control because microphones are powerful. So how would you de-escalate like any event like this whenever you things get out of hand, I guess you can say, what are some techniques you use, or do you have like a sort of plan of action that you go through to ensure that everything like comes down, settles down a little bit?
Right. Well, I mean, events can be unpredictable, but I mean, there's some
Yes.
strategies you can definitely use. I mean, I already mentioned being calm, and that's hard to do. But I hope as folks who want to be monitors that you understand who you are in conflict, and hopefully also if you're new to monitoring that you maybe shadow some folks before you start like diving headfirst, right? Because I think that
Yes.
seeing how other people handle it helps give you some skills too. So muscle memory is huge for me because I've been doing this for a long time. But I would say remaining calm, monitoring your tone and volume, because that's the other thing when you're responding and someone's yelling at you, it's really easy to start yelling back.
Correct.
Because you feel like you need to be heard, or you're also feeling elevated by that, but you can't kind of engage in that yelling back and forth. So you got to keep your tone and your volume down. Keeping your hands by your side, right? I mean, I'm all over the place with my hands, but when I'm doing this in particular, I usually kind of hold my hands together or at my side so that I'm not talking with my hands and exaggerating my warnings or talking to people about First Amendment in a very excessive way, right? Because I think that also takes down the volume a bit because they don't think there's a physical contact situation. Never touch anybody.
I was about to say, yeah.
Just do not. But I mean, that perception that you might touch them is one reason to keep your hands under control. Then never do it, right? The reality is that there have been times where I've had to do like this just to like keep some distance between people, because then they have to kind of touch me to get closer. But generally I keep my hands down because like I said, I'm not a huge crowd person. So like, I like to have a little personal space as well.
Right.
So taking care of yourself on that one. But then also, and this is not hard for me to do in these moments, but humor and sarcasm are fallbacks for me as well. And I think for a lot of people when they're uncomfortable or, these people will say some things to you that are fairly colorful or unkind. And so it's hard not to want to say them back or, I think we all have a level of maturity that falls away in crisis. So making sure that we're not being too sarcastic or humorous with them and listening, right? Because again, this is about letting everybody express themselves. So when you're engaging as a monitor, it hasn't stopped. You're now trying to have a conversation, but they're still going to be trying to express that speech, and they're going to let you know this is my First Amendment right. Absolutely, they have a First Amendment right. We're just here to talk time, place, and manner. You're not their best friend in the moment. You're just an administrator trying to maintain the order of campus.
Right.
But you're also not going to be popular with them, nor with the people who are complaining about them. So you have to just be on this plateau of chill, which is really hard to do in crisis. So I'm just going to own the fact that that's real. Other things, I remind people I'm there to support their speech.
Yes.
There have been times when, I'm talking to the person who's kind of causing the riff and then the person who's complaining about them. And I can turn to that person and say, I don't agree with them either. And my job is First Amendment. So unfortunately, whether I agree with them or not, they do have a right to be here, right?
Right.
So I'm allowed to be human, but I can't not do my job. Right. So there's that. But also, we talked about, protecting speech doesn't mean like allowing people to block entryways or make it hard for people to walk around. It doesn't mean that like an event gets to be disruptive. So like if people are blocking sidewalks or blocking, the ramps so that people can come and go, or, they're blocking the middle of the canyon so that you can't go get, your lunch or whatever. Obviously there are other ways to get into the student union, but you generally want to make sure that people have easy egress.
Easy access.
Don't argue with them. Don't be provocative. Stay away from being condescending, right? I mean, condescending, humor, sarcasm, those can be really good defense mechanisms in your day-to-day, but not when you're a First Amendment monitor. I'm kidding. I don't know that they're really great defense mechanisms, but I think we all lean on them.
Yes.
And then, keeping things simple, right? I mean, I worry even in this conversation, like lawyers who do constitutional law would totally go about this conversation differently. I am not a lawyer, nor do I play one on TV, but I do know what my duties are to the First Amendment. And so I try not to speak in legalese. I just, the real basic fundamentals of First Amendment, right? I'm not trying to talk over people or be condescending. And I'm also going to keep my language simple. I'm trying to be mindful. And then if someone's like on drugs or drunk, because let's just say I'm responding to a football game incident and someone's had a few too many, keeping that in mind too, because you don't want to be First Amendment monitoring and then someone's in physical health danger or suddenly gets kind of belligerent, right? That might be the right time for you to have police nearby or emergency responders like EMS, because
Yes.
the First Amendment is going to be a priority, and at the same time, so is your physical safety, their physical safety, etc.
Good.
Yeah, that's a lot.
No, that's good. That's perfect. A lot of things, that go into this. But I have a question. So, how would you notice that something is really escalating? How do you know, I guess you can say the atmosphere is about to, become challenging when you're monitored?
Yeah, I mean, I look a lot for that close proximity where people kind of start getting in each other's faces. That's one warning sign. Clenched fist, I think every time I clench my fist, I feel like I clench my face too. So maybe that's a good sign. But then the yelling, right? You're going to hear yelling, but it's suddenly this onset of yelling that you need to be concerned about. And then also, just people pacing. Sometimes people are just, spiraling in their head. They just start pacing. And so the yelling, the pacing, the clenched fist, those are definitely signs you want to watch for. Okay. But then also, so watch for them, see if there's a way for you to help with that de-escalation that's safe for you to do, but also understand your limits. Like I said, knowing who you are in conflict is really important. If it's a topic that's really hard for you to be hearing, and as a monitor, you're like, oh, I can't do this right now, it's okay to walk away. This is a situation where you got to call in backup, let somebody else step in. Or maybe maybe you've just been working the scene for an hour and you just need to go to the bathroom. You know what I mean? Just whatever it is, splash water in your face. Just know your own limits too, because we don't want you to be the one pacing.
I see. Okay. So I do recall there was I guess you can say, a protest going on a couple of years ago, a couple months ago. I think it happens every so often, right? When a protest does move indoors into an actual department. So what were the steps that you took in that situation to, make sure that everything went smoothly, or, for people to understand, the limitations that come with the First Amendment?
Yeah, so there have been times where it's been spontaneous, it's just that one person who shows up in an office. And then there's been times when we know that there's going to be something that takes place in a building.
I see.
And so they're the same, but a little bit different. If I know it's coming, oftentimes we'll try and have conversations with the folks who are organizing it, as well as the building where this might take place, just so that we understand, again, that threshold that people have, what would be disruptive to this office space or this building? What would be, what are the hours that you all are open? There's things that we take into consideration to work with people. But let's say it's that person who just spontaneously shows up in either situation. We're going to, show up, observe what's happening, introduce ourselves to whomever seems to be kind of an individual who's either there as a peacekeeper for the group or somebody who maybe has some connections with the group. So that
someone being the leader there?
Yeah, if there is one, a lot of times it's very democratic. But then, I usually, if it's going to be an event where I'm going to potentially be there for a while, I usually bring a witness. And when we're doing any First Amendment response, typically, if UAPD is on scene, they're not the first responders, but they're kind of observing, right? Because we're the first line of a defense for First Amendment. But we usually have some form of witness with us, right? Just in case we have to get into issuing warnings. We approach them, we try and speak to whoever's, involved, leading, whatever, ask their names, introducing ourselves. And then usually we're there because there's some behavior that's been complained about, right?
Yes.
It's this is our office space and they can't be here, or this is a laboratory, or, something that's not compatible, right? So we're talking with them about the behavior that has brought us there, right? It's not about the content again, never about the content. It's about, Armando's class is doing this field study in Nugent for dog days. This is a closed event, whatever it might be, whatever the reason is. We're talking to them about the behavior that's brought us there and the changes that we're expecting them to make. And then at this point, right, it may be a grouping oh, my bad, we didn't know, right? and they just correct behavior and it's not a non-issue. Or it might be a grouping oh yeah, we recognize that Armando's having this thing and
we just kind of wanted
we're doing this is happening, right? So then I might have to issue a first warning, letting them know, well, this behavior that's not congruent needs to change, right? So that first warning goes out. And then, we give them time to correct behavior, and then hopefully behavior corrects. But if it doesn't, then we move into that second warning, right? And then on that second warning, if UAPD isn't in some sort of proximity, they typically then are kind of brought in, because if we do get to a third and final warning and behavior still don't change, that's usually when there's potentially a trespass or some sort of disruptive, disrupting an educational environment. There's potentially going to be a criminal statute that would need to be addressed, and then that no longer, you know what I mean? Like if someone's trespassing, I'm not a police officer, I can't arrest people, right? But I can let people know I need to maintain the order of the space, and what you're doing, I've given you 3 warnings, the order has not been restored, so now I have to ask peace officers to come in. Yeah, and so then it might be an arrest for trespass or disruption or whatever it might be. So that's how that flows.
I see. Interesting. I really like the piece where you talked about you introducing yourself to, like, I guess you can say the ringleader or someone there. But I feel that establishes like a good sense of trust when you're monitoring and stuff. Most of the time, I want to say. But what are some other things that you do to help build up that good rapport with them?
Well, I mean, I like that you put it so optimistically. I don't think it necessarily establishes trust, but it at least I'm just saying, quite honestly, right? Because we're administrators, and so generally there's not going to be a lot of trust there, and I don't expect there would be. I mean, I'm just going to be realistic with you. Like, I'm not here to be popular. The reality is that usually if we're intervening, people are not usually thrilled about it, right? Because they're there to be heard, and they're worried that we're going to not let them be heard, and that's not the intention. I'll say that 1,000 times, but it's still going to feel that way because they're in a more emotional state than I am. So establishing rapport, sometimes it works, especially if we know an event's coming. Then they know that my role is I'm going to be out there, but I'm not there to stop it. Do you feel like you need police there? Do you not want police there?
I see.
Do you have people you'd rather I be talking to? If there's an issue, like in advance, it's much easier to establish that trust, right? But when something's spontaneous, it's harder to identify who to talk to that can actually impact change for the group. The group might be just a bunch of randoms who aren't connected. So it may be hard to maintain any order, but more so than rapport, it's more of just respect, being like, I'm here to treat you with respect. I'm here to just let you know what kind of the rules at play are in terms of behaviors. First Amendment content, go for it. But here's some expectations that the institution has related to order, because we're here to teach classes, give degrees. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's correct.
We are here to allow free expression, but it can't be at the expense of our mission, right?
Gotcha.
So is that what you were going for?
Yes, that's definitely what I was going for. Really good information that I got from that. Okay, yeah, so that was awesome. Thank you so much for, being transparent when it comes to, like, the monitors and what they're expected to do, especially when it comes to like these sorts of behaviors. We also understand that, students are in a more elevated emotional state. And you can mention this, like protests like these happen like out of nowhere sometimes. Sometimes you're made aware, sometimes you're not made aware.
Right.
So is there like a specific like plan of action that you all take? Like does a staff member have like a protest action plan set in place?
Yeah, so I think I'm hoping like departments are starting to think about it a little bit too, because some departments do controversial research. Some of them have faculty who are controversial. So I'm hoping people are thinking about action plans on their own, right? For, that time, place, and manner, because it can pop up. But for us, Dana students, for monitors, for us, it's about like that communicating with the leaders, right? So if someone's showing up in your space, if there's somebody who's in a kind of like an authority for that space that's willing to make that communication. Well, maybe someone else is calling data students being like, hey, this just popped up and we're talking to the people who just showed up, but we need backup or whatever. Great.
Yes.
But staying polite, right? Because people show up in your space. We all get protective of our space, you get to feel peace at your home. And I think for a lot of us who spend a lot of time on campus, we think of our offices as kind of our secondary homes, right? So if somebody just kind of shows up and starts being in the space in a way that you're not used to, it can be shocking. But even when it's shocking, be polite and calm and firm, right? You can say, oh, you can't go back there. Because then, if you've told them they can't go back there and they proceed to go back there, then you're also kind of building that case for a trespass, right? Because if you have a space where, again, like there's lots of places you can only get into with a CAT card, and there's a reason for that. They're secure locations because of research. They're secure locations because of the cost of the equipment. For whatever reason, they're secure locations. So be firm about, okay, you absolutely can't do that if that's the thing. can still be nice about it though. Don't make promises, right? Don't be like, oh no, well, if you guys leave now, then we'll stop doing whatever XYZ thing is. It's not realistic. I mean, I've had plenty of protests where students have had expectations that the institution make some change and then they would stop protesting. Well, I am the First Amendment monitor in this particular case. And yes, I can talk to other people on campus about what students want, but I don't have the ability to make changes to like ABOR policy or, all of those things are through shared governance or through ABOR. And so I can't single-handedly change something. So I'm not going to make those promises. And I tell everyone else not to do that either. And then, I think some people want to get into discussion, and if you feel like that's going to be productive, by all means, but I feel like we need to make sure First Amendment's happening. So asking them questions about their cause or counter arguing with whatever you think is the right or wrong thing, I'm not sure that's going to be the most productive thing to do. But then also follow through with, calling Dean of Students' office if UAPD is appropriate because there's some sort of trespass or concern for your safety. And then honestly, I think making sure our communications team for the university knows when these things happen are important too, because if there's a protest, there's a counter protest, there's probably going to be a news story. And then it can just become this behemoth, right? That we want to all act with integrity. And we want to make sure that everyone's aware of what the concerns are, whether it's being brought to us by the community, by students, whomever. So just keep the communication open, follow through, don't make promises you can't keep.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about formal warnings that are given. Warning 1, warning 2, warning 3. What do each of them entail?
So basically in the warning, you're establishing that you're the person with legal authority of the space. So you get to speak on behalf of the institution. You're establishing what the behaviors are that are not appropriate. And then you're letting them know kind of what expectation is moving forward. So warning 1, Chrissy, I have lawful authority. You're doing this disruptive thing. I expect this disruptive thing to stop, etc. So then you wait on that, doesn't correct. Then we move into second warning. Second warning says the same things, but then starts to talk about how you may be subject to arrest for XYZ.
Right.
Likely going to be about trespass or, disorderly conduct, whatever it might be that you're addressing as the behavior. So then you're, again, giving them a chance to fix it. And then the third warning is third and final warning. So you're letting them know this is it. Behavior again, lawful authority, stop this thing, or XYZ will happen. Arrest for trespass, arrest for disorderly conduct. And then that is the final warning. And at that point, if the behavior continues, then that is when we might have a criminal statute to address.
Okay.
So then that would be law enforcement or peace officers coming in to address that.
Okay, awesome. I see. And yes, that was a lot of information related to both disorderly conduct. And, on the last video, we also talked about those different perspectives and what First Amendment monitor can really expect when being there on the field, counter protesting or them being very open-minded and neutral on the situation, whether disagree with it or not, right? So I guess you can say that these are just so many things that were said here. So many takeaways. Is there anything else that you missed out on talking about? Maybe what they can expect while being in the field or anything small like that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I call them small, but I think, just that same thing about remaining calm, knowing yourself in conflict as a monitor, just because it's likely that you're going to be recorded if you're responding to a First Amendment issue. Even faculty and staff who may be on scene may criticize your rule, right? Because again, we're talking about people who are trying to express themselves. They're having an emotional reaction to something that's leading them to this moment. And so you're coming out there as this kind of very rational, very logical mind, but you're not agreeing with them. You're not seeing how they're being upset. And so that can rub people the wrong way. So you'll likely get some criticism there. So again, I never like telling people that they, have to endure that, right? Again, walk away when you need to, but it may be present. And you don't have to agree with folks, but we do have to agree with the fact that everyone has a right to say things. So you may disagree with the content, but you can't respond based on the content. It's going to be challenging work. People will question you. It'll be something that you'll have to think quick on your feet, right? Because at the end of the day, we're making sure everyone's expression is there, but we also want to keep everyone safe. So there's going to be some moments where you're like, okay, well, this just kind of went a different direction. Is there some quick action I can take
Mhm.
that's establishes, because right when you got protesters and counter protesters in particular, this comes up a lot. How do I create that enough space between them so that, everyone's being heard, but no one's being hurt, right? And so yeah, I just know too, it's hard on our campus community on when these things just kind of show up and they're offensive. And it's also hard to be the one individual or two individuals who go out there to try and manage that, because there's a lot of emotions involved. So it's going to be hard for you as a monitor, but keep in mind these folks are experiencing frustration. Maybe it's kind of bringing up prior traumas, injuries that they've had. And yes, we all have the agency to walk away from something. That's 100%. But whenever you do it with care and kindness. Again, this is not going to be the most popular thing you've ever done, and it's going to be hard work. So you have to make sure that you're in the right mindset to do it. Make sure you're taking care of yourself before and after and during. Always drink glass of water.
Absolutely.
Have a hat, your badge, your buddy, and also if just be honest with yourself about how this is impacting you, because I know that it's a hard situation to be in, but the First Amendment is certainly worth it if you think you can do it.
Awesome. Yes, that's really good to know, especially, their safety comes first. And, it's challenging work. You're right about that. I've heard it, you as a monitor, I've heard it from other staff members here.
Oh, you've answered the phones too.
Oh, I've answered the phones. Absolutely.
You know how people feel.
Oh, no. Yes, absolutely. So yeah, it's definitely some challenging work. And, I know our office does have a resource page for the First Amendment. So I'll go ahead and link it on the video right here, right now, if you all want to go ahead and check it out. We also have, this is going to be the D12 page, am I correct? Yeah, right?
Yep, this will be on D12, and then hopefully we'll have some opportunities for shorter videos for our students too, so that for monitors, we're hoping to have a resource page that they can direct students to if they need to complain about something, learn more about the First Amendment, or they need resources themselves.
Absolutely. So in order for you to stay in the loop on that, make sure you follow us on social media at UAZDOS on Instagram, and you can also go ahead and visit our website. If you do have any questions on the training, they can go ahead and contact our office. The email is currently on screen. But yeah, other than that, thank you so much for everyone's attention. We really appreciate you undergoing this training. And, hopefully this is the first step for you to being a monitor.
Yep.
A legend. But yes, thank you, everyone. You guys have a good rest of your day.
Bye.